Shahidullah, just going towards you first, I mean, asking you the first question, the big question really is that how come the army did not declare martial law?
I think the army realizes that it's completely been taken over by this popular movement. I mean, this was a youth-led movement. They did, in fact, try and suppress it very, very brutally, and they failed. The sad thing is a lot of people gave their lives, but at the end of the day, the army now is no longer in control.
And is this movement united? Is this a united movement? Because we are getting reports that the students are not really united, that there are different factions.
No, I disagree. I think the students are, it's not led by a single leader. Which is how other movements have taken place. It's a very decentralized movement. There are a large number of what they call coordinators, but no, it's been a spontaneous movement. It's been, and in a sense, it's part of its strength is the fact that it's so decentralized, which has made it more difficult. I mean, in the past, the government has managed to pick off the leaders, and they tried this in this case as well. It didn't work. And I think it's quite a mature group of young people who've done this. And the military knows that, you know, should they not obey the rules, they may come back to the streets. And I think the military's learnt its lessons.
Right. But Khushi Kabir, is this good for democracy that the students should be dictating what should happen next in Bangladesh? Does this concern you in any way?
No, it concerns me in the sense if we see that what they are dictating is something that is not leading to a kind of a peace and a kind of a situation when the nation is able to rebuild itself. You know, as Shahidul mentioned, and this is true, that this has been, you know, when you have a party in power without any opposition, I think a democracy without an opposition is not a democracy. So if you have been in power for over 15 years without any opposition, so there's no one to question you. You become autocratic. It becomes quite a tyrannical government. And this is what has happened. And I think that is what happened in this movement also. The movement came out with a quite innocuous, a very movement about having enough seats in the government, you know, the quota reform system.
Right.
So there the kind of support that they got from the entire people and public from across the country was something that the government, Awami League, was totally taken unaware of, because the Awami League by now had become totally divorced from the people themselves. They had no idea of what the popular appeal was. They had never sat with civil society or other members of society to try and get an actual picture of what is happening in the country. Plus, you talk about inflation, you talk about, you know, price spirals, you talk about the economy going down. So people are frustrated. And here was a group of youngsters who were out in the streets and bringing about and asking for change. And I think I'll answer your question about why the army didn't declare martial law. I think if the army declared martial law over here, the mood of the students was such this would not have worked. And the army would have become very unpopular. You also have to understand that our army depends a lot on their role as UN peacekeepers. They cannot take a role of being a martial law administrator that would jeopardize their role as the UN peacekeepers.
Well, that's a very, very good point. Allow me to ask this question to Shahidul Alam Saab. Well, another thing that the Indian Foreign Minister said, he said that it cannot be ruled out that there was a foreign hand. You are sitting on the ground in Dhaka. Do you feel that there was a foreign hand in this movement?
I think there's been a foreign hand in Bangladesh for a very long time, and that foreign hand is India. It's been Big Brother. It's been hugely, it tampered with Bangladeshi politics for a very long time. It's propped up a regime which has stayed on after 3 elections which were non-elections. And I think when you consider the role that India played in 1971, India should have been a friend. And we want India and Pakistan and all our neighbors to be friends. But India has behaved despicably with all its neighbors and certainly with Bangladesh. And now India's in a situation where it's lost the only friend it had in South Asia. So for India to be saying this, and also for India to be talking about radicalization and Islamization, given that India is the nation that it is, and the way it has been behaving, certainly during the Modi regime, is ridiculous.
Right. Khushi Kabir, do you agree?
Well, I'll just say that India has played a heavy role. There have been other governments, but I will just say one thing in favor of Sheikh Hasina, that when the World Bank pulled out from the bridge, the Padma Bridge, Sheikh Hasina managed to negotiate loans and funds from China. So whereas she is, it's an unequal relationship with India. India is very big on three sides.
Right.
And I will say the negotiations she's done with India have shown that she's much more subservient than she should be.
Right.
A negotiation is good and it's when you are on equal par. And with India, we are not on equal par, unfortunately.
But
though we've been making.
But coming back to Bangladesh and what's going to happen there next, I mean, people are worried. People want to know what's going to happen next. Are you expecting more reprisal killings, or do you think there's going to be calm where you're sitting? Are you seeing things go back to normalcy?
We are just hoping that once the caretaker government comes over, Dr. Yunus has been hounded by Sheikh Hasina on a personal level. Yes. The number of cases against him, etc. And petty things that they did, like stopping him from getting on the lift right onto the 8th floor of the court. Right. So I hope he's much bigger, than that, and he will not look at anything on a personal level. So he would allow and take on the responsibility. And I think I have total trust and faith in him. He will take on the responsibility of bringing back the country to a situation through which the country can move on and an election can take place. Whether Awami League will come or not come to elections will depend both on the situation on the ground as well as on Awami League itself, whether they can build themselves together. I would just say one thing, that the one policy that I hope the government will continue is a policy that will keep itself open, and not just to the US World Bank policy, not just to the India policy, but seeing what is the best for them and take on whichever policy. There may be China, it may be from other places. So that's something.
Right.